Okay, Duncan, sir, it is time to start reviewing an album.
It's time to start running. No,
not quite. Not yet. Let's walk before we can run. Let's check out the new album from psychedelic prog rock band Elder. The band's new album, Innate Passge, will be released on November 25th via Stickman Records and Armageddon Shop in America. So, album number 6 from Elder, which follows up a story of darkness and light, which was actually a collaborative effort they did with Cadaver in 2021, and the collaboration was a result of the tours being cancelled and COVID, and both bands residing in Berlin. So technically, you could say the last Elder album was actually Omens from 2020.
You doing album math?
I know.
Nowhere. No abacus required.
Researching. Founder Nick DeSalvo said, "This record channels the surreal world we live in from a fantastical point of view, not super literally, and how we as humans process that. Everyone on their own passage through time and space and whatever version of reality they choose for themselves. The phrase innate passage appeared to me when writing the record. Passage and transition are necessary in the human condition, and this process is intrinsic to us. All the growth and introspection we underwent in the past few years totally made this apparent to me more so than any other experience in life so far." The album was recorded and mixed by Linda Dagg at Clouds Hill Studio and then mastered by Carol Saff. Okay, Elder. Are you familiar with Elder? Were you?
No.
Oh, interesting.
And yeah. You picked
Okay.
it, so I was I don't know what I was expecting, but you were like, "This is the album we're reviewing on the show," and I was like, "Oh, cool." I could go in a couple of different ways. Fully expecting a hardcore album. Fully surprised it's not a hardcore album. So.
No, it is not. So I was familiar with Elder. Really liked Omens from 2020. I can't remember if I actually listened to the collaborative album when it came out. I listened to it for this review, but I actually can't remember hearing it when it actually came out.
You're not the biggest fan of split stuff anyway, though, so
no, this is true. This is true.
I probably saw that and was like, nope. Oh, no.
Not for me. So, yeah, Elder... Elder have always put albums out that take a few listens to kind of fully digest, for me anyway. But I mean, I often get an early indication whether I'm going to like the album or not. But for me to get my head round all the kind of intricacies and layers of an Elder album, it takes a wee bit of time. And this is only 5 tracks, but it's 53 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a short release.
It's not. No, it's not. So this one still took a few listens, and I think it was probably on the third listen that for me that all the kind of mechanics of the album started to kind of become clear. But I knew on first listen that I actually really liked the album. As soon as that kind of fuzz-laden bass and drum kind of groove kicked in on Catastasis. Is that how you pronounce that? Catastasis?
You've said it, so that's how it's pronounced.
Catastasis, I think. When that kicked in, I knew this album was going to float my boat. And then Elder kind of do what Elder do. They start to bring in more elements, kind of almost like one at a time, and then they start to build a track up from the ground, adding in layers of texture and atmosphere and harmonies before hitting you with that wee cheeky riff. And that opening track is kind of like a kind of perfect example of Elder in their element. You know, it's got depth, it's rich with melody and atmosphere. It's got could be some of the best vocal harmonies I've heard them do to date. But they never kind of let you get too lost in that kind of proggy, psychedelic kind of concoction of ideas. They always kind of rein it back in and bring it back with a really kind of groovy, kind of driven riff that kind of resets you, or or sometimes they might even go in the opposite direction and lean more into that kind of ethereal side of their sound.
Yep.
And they do a bit of both on the opener, so I think it's a really good kind of appetizer for the kind of rest of the album. And it kind of highlights just how kind of insanely talented these guys are. The guitar work is phenomenal on this album. Like the solos, and I'm not like a big solo guy, but the solos are really good. And that first track, the solo just kind of fits perfectly. It doesn't feel forced. Just kind of slots in nicely. And the vocals are very, very well crafted. As I said, the harmonies are sublime on this album, and you hear it straight away on the opening track. And then each kind of chapter of this album kind of takes you on a, I'm going to use it, on a journey, Duncan. It takes you on a journey. But it's true. Like each track has its own separate voyage.
Voyage is a good word. I like that one. That's a thesaurus against the word journey.
And they've all got their own kind of like ideas and kind of twists and turns, but the tracks all feel linked as well. And whether the track is 10 minutes or 15 minutes, it doesn't feel like they ever let it overcook either. Like I never felt like any point like, all right, this song has gone on too long. Like, just like cut this. Let's go to the next track. I felt like everything had a purpose and a reason for being there. I didn't feel like the tracks felt their length, even though that's only 5 tracks. I was kind of so caught up in it that I didn't even really notice. I think that there's a track on the album called "Merged in Dreams."
Yep.
And I think that was the track that kind of almost kind of fully encapsulated the album's theme. There's a really great arc to that track. They talk about like passages and transitions in the press release, and I feel like this track really delivers those really, really great transitional moments. From the kind of slow burn intro, it has these kind of spacey kind of prog keys and pick guitars, and then it moves into a kind of still quite slow but kind of heavier riff. But then they use those background guitars, or the pick guitars, as to kind of bridge into something more upbeat and groovy. And that track, like in the middle of the track, it has it all. Like it's got the prog licks between the bass and the drums. It's got the uplifting lead work, great melodies, and then the way they kind of pull it all together and kind of bring the end to a climax is really, really well done. And then I love the way that track kind of bleeds into the last track as well, with the synths becoming the intro of the closing track, which is the purpose. It's all very well done, and it kind of actually the way it finishes that track, it's a kind of similar piece of guitar work that starts the album as well. So I liked how they kind of linked it all together. I really enjoyed this. I thought it was a really, really strong album. The only criticism that I have, and it's a wee bit of a weird one, but the vocals on this album are brilliant, like fantastic vocally. But there's something about the choruses that don't feel super obvious. And like because the tracks are really, really long, really winding, the first couple of times I listened to it, a couple of the choruses completely passed me by. Like I didn't even realise it was the chorus. And they don't overplay a chorus either. Like a track like Coalescence, like it's 10 minutes long. They play the chorus twice in the whole track. So there's moments that I felt like they could have either made a couple of the choruses a bit more pronounced. Sometimes they kind of transition into a chorus where there's no huge kind of build up, and I feel like the impact wasn't quite as big as I was expecting, or as big as it should have been. Or they could have even maybe just added 1 or 2 more choruses to balance out the length a little bit. It's my only criticism of it. And then the other side of that, they are a prog band at the end of the day. So, you know, it's just the kind of the nature of that style. But there's still certain vocal moments on the tracks that you'll start to kind of latch on to, and you'll find yourself kind of humming the melody as well. But yeah, not a lot to grumble about for me on this one. It's diverse, it's varied, it's dynamic. You can hear the Elder just, you know, don't just do the same album over and over. You know, they tweak each release and give it its own kind of personality. This one I felt was a little bit kind of grander in places than Omens, and I think a lot of that might be from the kind of strings that they use that are added just to kind of elevate certain kind of sections. But as an album, it felt slightly less prog heavy as well. It didn't feel quite as busy an album as Omens. It feels a bit more spacious in places. But another really strong release from the band. I don't think, if you're a fan of Elder, I don't think you'll be disappointed with this at all. What about yourself? For someone that was new to the band, how did you get on with this?
I liked this quite a bit.
Yeah.
I think it plays to a lot of what I enjoy, my musical sensibilities in a lot of respects, even though I have apparently a plethora of music sensibilities, because I do have a wide range of stuff that I enjoy listening to, and if something that's me in the right mood at the right time, you will find me smiling, and this is an album definitely worth a smile or two. What I liked about it was there's a real attention to the production on this one that kind of grabbed me. You were mentioning about the keys earlier on. The keys have a very kind of late 70s sort of vibe about them, which totally fits in with the kind of fuzzy sound they've got going on. But even down to the choice of sims that they use on the keys felt very authentic of the era. The band that sprung to mind on that was something like kind of later Day of the Sword. Like their use of keys, we'd spoken to them on one of their tours, where they were basically telling us the reason behind their use of said keys was that they got access to just a huge array of retro keys, and they sat down and found sounds that kind of fit their aesthetic. And I kind of get this vibe here as well. It works because it doesn't overpower the track, yet it's different enough that it makes it stand out. Coalescence is a great example of that. The keys at no point are obvious, yet they completely work within the track, whilst at the same time using a sound that I wouldn't conventionally pick to go along the sims in the track. So it's weird how they've done it. Their approach to that is surprising, and it does. It really fits together. What I love about them is there is there's a grand feel to the song composition, almost on that kind of film score level. They really, really, really are a confident band. I mean, I don't know many bands, we've listened to a few this year, but there aren't many bands that even on a track like The Purpose can play the majority of a song with little or no vocals at all, and then bring them in the last couple of minutes to close it out on a 9-minute song. You know what I mean? It's like there's a degree of, I would say, confidence in the music's ability to keep the listener's attention there, because people are, preconditioned to kind of hunt that vocal line, especially in a band that they know is not instrumental, and they don't go out their way to make it easy, but at no point does it sound obstructive or obtrusive either. It all feels very organic. And then when you're talking about that song composition style as well, I had picked up on the fact that there wasn't necessarily the hooks that I was expecting in places. Then I also kind of felt that's what made them sound a little bit different. It's what's made them because I did it was maybe on the second listen before I was kind of humming away at certain bits or whatever. By the third listen, I still don't know if I was humming a chorus. I was very much aware when they were coming back to something I'd heard before. However, that's the central point. That's what we're supposed to be focusing on. And you're right. In certain instances, they're not in any hurry to give you it, and they're not in any hurry to position it in the same place it was the previous time they did it either. Which, once again, I like that idea. I like that idea of let's see where the music takes us, and if we do return to something, cool. If we don't, then that's fine. Sometimes it'll take a long way to get back to something that we want to do again, and sometimes we'll never come back to it at all. And there's a kind of free-form, kind of almost aloof sort of thing going on there until you actually start to scrutinise the music and realise that it is methodically done. I mean, like to a fault, everything is placed perfectly here. The way they build up their tracks, the way they allow that space to come in and then branch everything out, so you get this cacophony of different elements all kind of washing in. No point too much, and I would also argue no point too little. Was I sitting thinking that's a bit thin? It's such a fine balancing act they've managed to do. I think maybe you've hit the nail on the head here. If you're a fan of this band, I think it's very easy just to get on board with this. I think unless you are of the school of kind of prog listeners or people that are into longer form music, some of this might be a bit daunting at first, but I would say it's definitely, even on those extents, I think if you persevere, you will enjoy. And like there's just a craft about it. And then lastly, vocal melodies are incredible. Like the guy has such a clean, smooth tone that's deployed very, very smartly. And once again, not overused at all. If I was this guy, I'd be singing over everything. Like there would not be a bit where there was not vocals. But the fact that he holds back and picks moments that he feels, right, this bit could have some vocals. I love that as well. It's smart songwriting. And it's songwriting not for the sake of shifting units. It's songwriting for the sake of what's best for the song. Which arguably we should all be trying to do. But that's not always what sells particularly well. So yeah, I thought it was great. Also, the last thing we were talking about, the production. The production is very undercooked here in a way that I like. So like there's from my perspective, that drum sound is about as natural a drum sound you're going to hear. And that kind of organic feel really suits our sound. I've heard some prog stuff where we go the other way and everything's a little bit too tidy, a little bit too immaculate. Here, that earthiness, like it suits the sound. If anything, it amplifies it in the best possible way. So yeah, pleasant is a horrible word to use when discussing anything except like your wife's new dress that you think's okay. Or like a dinner with friends which you wish you'd never go to again. That was pleasant. Like pleasant's never a great word to, but this is a pleasant sounding album. You know what I mean? It pleased me to listen to this album. It's pleased me every time since then. Is it, end of year material? Probably not for me, but I mean, I'd be hard pushed to pick a bit where I thought, nah, that doesn't really work. Or, that doesn't really hang together. It's a very, very well crafted, very well written album. And yeah, they can now count me as a fan. I don't know if I'll ever get time to jump back and check some of the older ones, but if they put something in the future, I'm there for that.
Yeah, the older ones are a kind of similar format. It's very like, it's 5-6 songs, like all kind of 10, 12, 13 minutes long. So what we're thinking score wise for this one, I have a real issue scoring this album because I have tracks on this album that are really good and I'm like, that's a clear like 4.5. I could throw a 4.5 at that. And then I have other tracks on here where I'm like, that's a good track, but it's not quite as good as the other tracks, maybe just not quite as memorable because there's kind of less of a punch in the chorus or not as many choruses on the track for me. And I also have an issue with albums like this, and this happened with like Boss Keloid as well. These kind of longer, kind of more kind of proggy, kind of experimental albums, I take a while to come around to them as well. I found with like Boss Keloid, I was like, I think I scored at a 4.5, but then by the end of the year, I was like, this is a 5.
You were high on it,
and I feel like this might happen with this album as well, but at the moment, I think I'm sitting at a 4 out of 5 on this one. I think it's very close between a 4 and a 4.5 for me. It's really a tough one to score, but I think I'm sitting more on the side of the 4 than the 4.5. What about yourself?
No quandaries from me. This is a 4.
All right, okay.
I have no debating on that one. And like I say, like I challenge anyone to listen to this album and not enjoy what they're doing. The only criticism you might get are from people that think that maybe some of the tracks are a bit too long. But then why are you checking out a band in this genre if that's an issue? So if you're saying that the previous stuff is all similar form, then if you're a fan of the band, you're going to love it.
Yeah. Okay, so links to the band below, you can check them out. Let us know what you think. If you're checking us out on YouTube, stick some comments in. Happy to hear your thoughts and opinions on it. And that is the review, ladies and gents.